So it seems that we are live. Let me check on my mobile if we are indeed live. Yeah, I can see my funny face, so it seems to be all right. 1 minute left. I could even start such countdown, like that was cool. Okay. Matt, you're muted.
Helps if I'm not muted. I agree.
Yeah. So hello. I hope that there are some people watching us. If you are, then would be great if you could just let us know that everything is working fine and that you're here. In the meantime, we will start the preparation. Final drink of water, and yeah. Oh, hi, João.
There you go, with somebody here.
That's always a pleasure. It's always weird to me to do webinars because I'm never sure if anyone's watching. So seeing some people alive, that's cool.
Yeah, it's an alternative.
Okay.
Do you want to start with a bit of an intro, Ben?
Yep. So, Matt, could you maybe briefly tell us about your application? Because we will try today to go and migrate your old dict in the GitHub repository.
Yeah.
What's the history behind it?
So the intention behind this. Yep, I will do. So the intention behind this kind of this webinar, this little broadcast that we're doing, is to help people migrate from our old TCP client to our new gRPC client. They are very similar, but there are some nuanced differences that we'll discuss as we go through this. But it was just an opportunity to just talk about some of the new stuff and basically see how it goes. The project that we picked to do this is called Patient Management. Now, this is a really old project that I wrote maybe 5 years ago for a talk that I did on event sourcing. It has been updated since then. There are some mistakes in here that we will correct as we go through it, and it also uses an earlier version of .NET. Was it 4.5?
Yeah, 4.5.
I think it's 4.5.
Yeah.
4.5. So we're also going to upgrade it to the latest version and make use of some of the features in there as well. To give a little bit of background about what exactly this application does, it's pretty simple, but it's so I used to work with the NHS, and this is the part of the NHS that I used to work on, which was all about a patient's journey through a hospital, something that the hospital would call an encounter. And that is part of a domain that describes a patient getting admitted, getting transferred between wards, and hopefully at the end of it getting discharged. It covers a lot more stuff in actual reality, but for the purpose of this little demo, I only covered the 3 use cases, which is to admit a patient, to transfer a patient between wards, and then to discharge a patient. So it keeps it nice and simple. So we have the command side, the right side, which is what Oskar is showing right now. Oh, great. We've also got Jake on the call. Hey, Jake. Jake will know very well. So for clarity, Jake works in this as well. So he'll probably know more about it than I do. And then yeah, so we've got a right side, we've got the three commands here, which are to admit a patient, transfer a patient, discharge a patient, but we've also got the read side as well, which in event sourcing and CQRS, read side and right side are separate. And for the read side, if you go have a look at the two projections that we've written, Oskar, you'll see we've got a patient demographic projection, which basically will tell you the ages of all the patients that have been admitted. And then we've also got a ward view projection, which tells you which patients from which ward. So that's pretty much it. It's a nice, hopefully simple little application, which we can just use as a way to demonstrate the move from TCP to gRPC. So you want to get started?
If you have any questions about domain or in general, what we will be showing here, then feel free to send them. We will focus today mostly about the differences and how to do the migration, but not precisely about the features. But of course, we will cover some of that. But if you need to get some more details or we shall drill something more, then feel free to raise questions. So I can also add that because I was working recently on the guidance, also written guidance on how to migrate TCP to gRPC. And when I found this Matt's project, then it seems to be for me like a good candidate for initial test and proof of concept, because it's enough simple, but it's covering majority of the common use cases like appends, reads, subscription, etc. But as you can see, everything is red. I don't have .NET Framework, classical .NET Framework installed anymore on my computer, and I'm quite happy about that. But so we'll start our journey at first with migrating and making that compile on my computer. So going to .NET 6, and gradually we'll be going through the migration. So as Kent Beck said, we will try to at first make the change easy and then make the easy change. Of course, we'll see if that's easy or not. So I hope that someone has old bad memories like I do, watching at this XML structure. That's an old .NET structure. We won't use it anymore. So as you can see, Matt used some old nuggets like ensure that, but it seems that it's still existing, and so we will use it. We will get rid of all of that by, just pasting the new structure. So as you can see, .NET 6, we will use nullable types because they are cool. We will treat warning as errors. That's something that I would recommend while doing migration, because warnings can bring a lot of insights. And of course, we will do this. We will use new structure.
It genuinely is so much nicer.
Yeah.
It's been a long time now, but when you go back and look at the previous project structure, it does induce nightmares.
Yeah. Especially, to be true, I like this package config idea, or package JSON as it was, but unfortunately Xamarin make us use MS Build. But yeah, it's much nicer. And also, as we will be migrating, then I hope that you'll see that also .NET brings some additional possibilities and cleaning up some of the structure. Okay, so let's try to build the project. You will see what's breaking. So yeah, mostly majority of those issues are related to nullable types, because in .NET 6 you can have like a basic test of whether the reference type is nullable or not, which is kind of cool, because then you can build better type system, especially if you are DDD fan, then you probably know that having the type system is great. But unfortunately, it's also syntactic sugar, so we can skip those errors, and we'll do with the exclamation mark, because here we expect that after we deserialize something, then we will get this object. Of course, in the production code, probably it would be better to check whether this is fine or not.
Yeah, so for clarity on that, the piece of code that Oskar was just showing there is for basically just deserializing and reserializing events out of EventStore.
Yeah,
so it's probably the simplest way you can do it, but not always advisable.
Yeah, in the long term, because we are using here all the Newtonsoft JSON.NET. So of course, you might consider migrating to system text JSON. Of course, I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm a system text JSON hater, but let's skip that part. Yeah, so again, we will skip some of those warnings because we are sure for now that it's fine. And also, it seems that in the meantime, because I also migrated to the latest TCP client version, which is crucial. So if you are using older version of the TCP client, like V5, then I would recommend starting migration to migrate to the latest TCP client. It doesn't have a lot of breaking changes, but some like that. So changing long to int or etc. That could happen. So let's see. Slide start is int. I think that it should be good if we do it like a long. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. This code that I'm changing is related. It's a wrapper. Maybe Matt, you would like to explain the aggregate repository, or shall I do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it really, but this is basically just a wrapper around the event store access. So there's a number of methods on it. Just the main ones being to get an aggregate, in which case it would create a new type and replay any events against that type to bring it up to its current state. And then there is also a save method on it, which is responsible for taking any new events from the aggregate and persisting them to event store. It's quite simple, but it's just a little bit of code, but it's just nice and easy to wrap up.
Yeah. It's save is just taking events out of the aggregate root. So the cache that is in aggregate root, then it appends it of some stream name. We'll get to that part later on. And getting events. And I think that that's one of the advantage of using gRPC. You'll see that later. But previously, you had to do explicit paging in TCP client. In gRPC client, right now, readStream returns async enumerable. So you don't need to do paging if you don't want to. You can just enumerate through the stream events, which is also better from the memory pressure because you are loading in a smaller chunks. And so, yeah, we just migrated just to prove you. Let's build it. Build succeeded. Cool. We have 3 projects left. This project is mostly responsible for the write logic part. And projection manager, as Matt said, it's for read model. Yeah. Let's again erase all of those bad memories. Oh, so Matt, could you maybe tell why did you decide to use RavenDB?
No idea. Yeah, at the time it seemed like a logical choice. So when it comes to writing these kind of applications and you start looking at the read side, it's best to have a database that's nice and flexible, so you don't have to worry too much about the I can't think of a proper word for it now. The schemas. So often the choice is to use some document database of some kind, so RavenDB, MongoDB, or something like that. RavenDB was good, so that seemed like the right choice to make.
Yeah, I can second that. In my opinion, select document databases or in general KeyValue databases are good matching for read models, especially if you are following the CQRS or even sourcing pattern, because they allow you to denormalize and make some performance adjustment to not need to do additional joins and have this performance penalty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the other thing to remember about this, though, is that ultimately with CQRS, the idea is that you keep your read and your write model separately. And once you have a separate read model, write model, and a separate read model, then it's quite easy to jump to a conclusion that you can have multiple read models. And there's no reason why all those read models have to be in a single database. You can choose a read model that's specific to your use case. So a graph database, or even a relational database, or in this case, like say, a document database. It just allows that flexibility.
I agree. I think that Greg said somewhere at one of his talk that if you are using only a single database with event sourcing, then it's you are not having full benefit. I think that that's a bit too far, but I agree that it's a great chance for optimization, like having the right model or majority of data in like Raven or Mongo or Postgres, and having like a full text search on Elastic. So yeah.
In fact, that's quite a common use case, is to do a search via Elastic.
Yeah, so I think that we should be also advocating how to migrate Raven client to the latest version, because we also going through a few versions. So it seems that namespace has changed.
Yeah.
We need to update that. It seems that the document store initialization changed a bit. Not that one. Yep. So we can provide multiple URLs. I'm not RavenDB specialist, as maybe Matt was at that time.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I can also say that previously the RavenDB was using unique identifiers, and right now it seems that they generalized that to string. So we have to adjust that. We can still keep the proper typing in events, because we are just here applying event on top of the document just to update what's needed, like a word number when patient was transferred, or delete document if patient was discharged. So we can still keep the proper typing here, but resign from, but update accordingly. Yeah, this seems to be fine. Hey, Khalid, we're glad that you joined. Let's try to build it. Maybe it's working. Yeah, it seems that it's not. Okay. We need to also do some trick with the nullable reference type, because we could use here the records. However, if it's projection and we are just updating the state, then that could be a bit overkill. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I do.
There is no need, in my opinion, to just create additional object just for the sake of purity. Yeah. Here we can use record, because event handler is just a definition of the action that we will be doing while getting some event type. So we are just registering that for this event type we will perform such action. So it's immutable once it's registered. And let's have a look where it's used.
So you're a fan of record types, Oskar?
They are useful. I wouldn't say that I'm a huge fan. In general, I think that you need to be really careful when you are using them, because they are not fully immutable. Like you can modify the inner data, or you can still do some reflection magic if you're into that. And so they are not precisely the same as immutable types in F#, which I would like to have. But yeah, they are useful. Of course, they are not great if you are using them for value objects, because let's get back to event handler. Because the shortened definition, you will need to provide other value objects here, and you cannot just do simple validation or somehow inject it here. So to do that, you would need to create a constructor, which you can do, but then this simplified syntax is not useful anymore.
Yeah,
so I would say
a class then.
Yeah, I would say that they are great for DTOs and code structure that we know that are immutable like that. So for some infrastructure, I think that's good. And what are your thoughts on that?
Same, absolutely. I mean, I was happy when we came along. We do reduce a lot of syntax, but it's the same as anything that comes new in .NET. Is the new shiny, everybody tries to use it for everything, and it's not always applicable.
Yeah, so just like we did here, so for projection, I wouldn't use, because what's the point of creating here like a with, then storing it again? That's kind of overkill.
Yeah.
So it's better to just use the object. But yeah, for example, for events, we could replace events to the records. Yeah, so it's significantly simplified the notation, I think. So if you are migrating from the TCP to gRPC, then of course it's not needed for you to use records. But my small recommendation is that you might already consider that maybe it would be useful to also adjust your code base accordingly. To, like, those are simple changes, but we could even zip all of those events into single file, not be like a Java specialists, and keep all the classes in dedicated files. So those migrations are not so hard to do, in my opinion, at least. So I updated all the events and all the comments into the records. So let's see if that's compiling. Yay, we made it. Matt, so could you maybe tell more about those enigmatic seed generator and test console projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to these, but essentially it was just a simple way to generate a load of data for the purpose of the demonstration. So seed generator will generate, I don't know what it is, like 200 patients and move them around the hospital a little bit. And then the test console's just, I think, possibly only got one step through. I think that was just the easiest way to kind of work through it whilst I was giving the talk.
Yeah.
So, but I used yeah, that's it. Was it called Bogus? Is that
no? Let's give some appreciation to old projects. Let me find it. Random name generator.
Yeah. So that just generates some random names. But apparently that was one called Bogus.
Yeah, I think I wasn't able to find this nugget anymore, to be true.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. I was just looking there, but it was so this was originally written in EventStore version 3.9. So yeah, it's actually older than I thought.
Yeah. So so we will use Bogus. Bogus is a nice class for generating dummy data. So if you are doing some builders to generate some random name, like random name based on gender or some date in the past, then I think that's worth considering using. This is really cool NuGet. So yeah, as we see, we are just generating some dummy data, and that's all. Let's see what's not compiling again. Let's do some, but kids don't try to do this at prod. Typically, if you see that because .NET compiler is complaining because there is no constructor that immediately assign value, non-nullable value to string. So we either need to say compiler that don't worry, we know what we are doing, or we shall create a non-default constructor that would initiate this property. So but we are professionals and we know what we are doing, so trust us. Yeah, trust me, I'm an engineer. Let's see. Okay, what is complaining? Oh, we need to delete some old data. Okay, let's check that. I think that we have some obsolete namespace here. Yep. And we're good. And we'll have the console. So let's again replace some of that and delete some of the obsolete code. And mostly that should make it compile. So yeah, first step made. The patient management code is now compiling. Woohoo! And we can also benefit from a few others .NET 6 improvements, like we could use the file name scopes. I don't know, what do you think, Matt, about file scope namespaces?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. There's not much to it, but obviously also you can pull out the program as well there, right? So.
Yep. Yeah, I really like this change because I was really annoyed about this an additional indentation for no reason. So yeah, right now IDEs allows to just do it in a single refactoring, and we could also
as well.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we could get rid of this whole class. So we could put the code here. We will need to get some usings, and yeah, we need to copy those methods. Well, we need to copy all of those methods outside of the class, and that one also. And we could now get rid of this whole class. Let's do some sorting. That's not needed. That's not needed. And that's also not needed. And we need to rename, I think, random somewhere. Oh, I think that I forgot to copy that part. Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool for the console applications because you can squeeze all the initialization, and it's looking, in my opinion, at least based on my aesthetics, a bit cleaner. For ASP.NET, it's a bit different. I'm not sure what to think about that, to be true. Is it better or is it worse?
It's different?
Yeah, it's different.
How so?
You should be working in a diplomacy. And the last program, CS, think that what we are doing is called Boy Scout rule, right?
Yeah.
So we are leaving the code a bit better than it was.
I don't think you could have left it worse.
Yeah. So let's try to compile it again. Yeah. Great. But so far, we don't know if it's working or not, right? So we will. So Matt, how are you running EventStoreDB in these old ages?
I think I was probably running it locally at the time. I don't know, when did Docker come out? Was this pre-Docker?
I think that it should be there already, but I'm unsure.
Yeah, I was probably just ignoring it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the better option now is to definitely to run it as Docker.
So you were also building it locally?
What, EventStore?
Yeah.
No. I would have just been getting the executable and running it.
I thought that you are such a hardcore
No,
to
unfortunately
also
not.
do it. But yeah, in general, we recommend right now to start with Docker. We wouldn't recommend using that Docker or Kubernetes on prod for various reasons. There is a post about that. Mostly, it's about the durability and volumes. It's possible to run it on containers, but it's a bit tricky. So it's good if you are familiar with all of the details. But I think that I haven't seen any database that would officially recommend to use it on top of containers. So yeah, I'm just setting up the EventStoreDB config. This is our official image.
Do you want to talk through the options a little bit?
Yeah, we can. I'm using the easiest option, so single node cluster. If you want to configure multiple one, which I recommend for the prod, because then you will have better fault tolerance, etc. But here we are just running it as a single node to not complicate the configuration. Then we are saying that we want to run all of the projections and system projections. Of course, we are exposing some ports. One will be for HTTP, so also UI. The other is for TCP communication, because we'll be doing that, because we will gradually migrate to gRPC. Then we are doing next thing that we do not recommend to do on prod. So we are running EventStore in an insecure mode, so in without HTTPS or TLS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you say, it's probably worth pointing out with that option that something that people don't often realize is that actually also turns off the authentication as well with EventStore. So everybody will access it as an admin, which is another reason why we recommend not using it in production.
Yeah. And in the newer versions, you also need to tell EventStore that you would like to expose the TCP communication, because by default it's not enabled, and same for HTTP, because the reason why we are meeting here is that TCP is considered legacy, and current HTTP, same.
Am I right in assuming that you also need the atom pub over HTTP to get the admin UI to work fully?
Yes, that's correct. So I'll be also adding container for Raven. We also again using insecure mode because we are cheating a bit. And let's try to run it on the Docker. I'm stopping my old one. Yep. Let's make sure that we have everything cleaned up. So also old data that we had. And we can Run it. Yeah. It seems that it's working fine. No issues here so far. So as we have this Docker ready, then we could try to run it. So let's maybe try to run test console and see if it's working after our migration. Yeah, and they are telling that .NET is so fast. Okay.
Does that run? Is the only console out on it?
It seems, yeah. Maybe let's put a breakpoint. Let's try again. There is always the case when something is not working. Okay, let's wait a few seconds more. It seems that it's stuck somewhere. And I think that it's stuck because it's trying to connect to the database, and it's not throwing exception because TCP is TCP client by default. They have reconnections. So if you lost connection, then it could reconnect on the next, even on the same call. And what it has, and gRPC client doesn't have, is also, besides reconnection, there are also retries. So the TCP client is trying to, at first, if it's the issue with the connection, reconnect, but if it's some internal failure, like a transient error, then it will also try to run this call again. So in this case, I think that the issue is that our connection settings is default, and the new TCP client is also secure by default, because that's the way that we would like to go. So we can change those settings a bit, and also tell the TCP client that we expect to not have the secure connection. So we can do it like that. Let's try it again. Yeah. So it seems that it worked fine. So we it seems that the commands run successfully. They stored events, because dispatcher, what it does, it just sends command, checks for if there is some command handler registered, and if it is, then it just runs it. So let's close our console app and try to see our UI. Let's refresh. And yeah, that's correct. If we go to stream browser, then we see that new stream has been created, and it contains 4 events. So the same amount as we would expect from the test console. So admin, transfer, discharge.
Do you want to go back and explain what the dollar events are all about in the admin UI for people that might not know?
The dollar at?
Yeah.
Oh, right. So we also have a few internal projections. So by default, if you enable, let me just open again Docker Compose. So if you run database with the setting like run projection all and standard projections, then EventStore provides built-in projections that are grouping events in various ways. One is event $et, which is all events that are of the type patient discharged, and we will have those events here. And we also have by projection by category. So we can see that like by projection updated, or we can have projections by event type, etc. So all of those projections are meant to help to build, like to use event store in a way, just to not need to always get data directly from the single stream, but also have possibility to have some kind of grouping. I'm thinking about them like indexes in the regular databases.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I equate it to. So if you just wanted to get all of the patient admitted events rather than having to subscribe to the all stream, you could just subscribe to that projection. And the amount of data that would get transferred over a wire would be a lot less and it'd be a lot quicker.
Yeah, let me maybe run again our test console. Yeah, it's fine. So we have so we no, not that one.
Do you know why it's not working?
No,
I know why it's not working.
Okay, I know, because of the special sauce.
Yes.
Okay.
I just suddenly twigged then. I was thinking White Vans is a peculiar looking stream name. So for clarity on this, before when I actually wrote this first example, I wasn't making use of all of the functionality within EventStore. And I wasn't aware that although it's not enforced, there is an implied naming convention in EventStore, which is your streams should ideally be a type followed by a hyphen followed by an identifier of some kind. Because the way that our projections work internally is they look for that format and they will split it on the hyphen. For some reason, when I wrote this demo originally, I decided that a plus would be a better delimiter than a hyphen, and that obviously will stop all the projections from working as well. So yeah, something to bear in mind, sure. So yeah, I totally threw you under the bus on that one. Sorry, Oskar.
So let's try it again. In the meantime, I clean it up database again. And let's.
Yeah, I mean, generally, when people are defining streams for like an event source application, we'll have the aggregate type followed by a hyphen followed by some unique identifier. And normally, you'll take a GUID and just remove the hyphens from it.
Yeah. So let's check, for example, category encounter and run it twice. So I already ran it for the first time and now for the second. And yeah, as you can see, we will have all the encounters. So all the records of the type encounter like listed here by a linked event. Because projection, what they are doing is that they are creating a linked event, which is just saying that to which event it targets. So it's like a pointer in C++. So to not double the data, those projections are just creating a minimal set of information, but you will be able to resolve it and use them. We will get to that later on.
Cool. So that's working now, and I guess the next thing is to move it to gRPC, right?
Yeah, almost.
All right, go
on. So what I would recommend also to do before migrating, making the final migration, is start to use connection strings, because connection string is something that we also recommend in gRPC. In TCP, they are not working as great as in gRPC. Some configuration might be not handled fully. So sometimes you need to fall back to connection settings. But if you prepare your code base that you will be injecting connection string, then it would be, in my opinion at least, I don't know, Matt, what do you think about that? But in my opinion, that would also simplify like a small step towards gRPC migration.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, in a production application, sure. I mean, you've got to realize that some of this was done for the simplicity of a demo, right?
Yeah, and just one thing that I would like to cover is that if you are using TCP client, just a small hint, that you need to be careful about the settings of the retries and reconnecting. So what I mentioned already. So that's the settings that we would probably recommend. So try to keep reconnecting, because the event store connection typically was inject like a singleton, but it had also closed event. So if you don't want to do some magic and handle this closed event, then you should say that you would like to keep reconnecting. But still, it would be worth to limit the maximum number of retries, because if you have like 7, or I don't know, if maybe in your case it would be 17, then it might mean that maybe database is so doomed that there is no point of hammering it more. We already had the cases from our customers where they were not setting the maximum number of retries, and then they were doing DDoS because of some issues with the database or the application load. They were hammering so many times and with the such cadence that they didn't allow even to database to just catch up and move forward.
Yeah, because there is a keep retrying option, isn't there, on the connection settings? It's very tempting.
Yes. Yeah. So even if we want to, then maybe it's better to just restart application or stop application instead of banging database, because that's probably mean that it won't help. So yeah, I think that the last part about the modernization that we need to do, and I will show it in the projection management. Let's also update. Let's also update the program here, so to use the same settings as we did for test console. So let's try that one and update it here. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
So let's do it. And the projection manager, what it does, it just listens, subscribes. If we go to the class, then it's using the TCP client and subscribe to all. So to all events that were recorded in database. After that, it's handled with the event appeared callback, and then it's just trying to deserialize event from event store and run projection logic that you saw that we already changed. So let's make sure that, because we know that write model is working, let's check if TCP connection and our clients is working fine. Let's debug it. And yeah, it's not working. And it's not working because it seems that RavenDB database does not work. It's not created. So, and in fact, it's not, because it seems that in the meantime, while database has changed, the ensuring that database exists is not run automatically. So I just pasted dummy code that is using the using RavenDB API to make sure that if database is not created, then we are creating it. And I think that should be fine. So let's check what's not right. Yeah, it's fine. Let's run it again.
Yeah, it's working.
Almost. It's not.
You wrote something.
No, So the patient discharged is failing because it cannot find patient, and patient it cannot find because probably it's getting this event more than once, and it's
right. Yeah, so when I originally wrote this, the intention was to keep it as, again, simple as possible, so I had projections turned off. Now, if you've got projections turned on and you're listening to the all stream, that does mean there's a possibility of getting the same event more than once, because you'll get it once from the aggregate stream, and then you might get it again when it gets to the event that exists within the projection stream, right?
Yep. So in general, if we are using resolve link-tos, there is a setting for subscription, but also for reads. Then all of those events that were added to those streams created by projections will be resolved. So for each of this projection, if we are subscribing to all events, then we will get a resolved event, which will have the same data. So we can change that. Let's go to Projection Manager. And Projection Manager is also using default settings. And in TCP client, the default setting is to resolve link-tos, which is, in my opinion, like one of the quirks that I'm not so fan of the TCP client, because typically you would expect, if you are subscribing to all, that you would like to get only regular events to reduce the traffic. And also, unfortunately, we don't have like a nice builder that we have for connection settings, so we need to set up all of that. So we will replace that one. We can check what are those settings if you'd like to, but mostly what we are interested is this resolve link-tos. This is about logging. We can provide subscription name that will be shown in the UI, and some internal size of the queues and batches. I wouldn't recommend to change them. Those are values that I just copy and paste from the source code.
So this kind of also further reinforces the point that your event handlers should be idempotent, right?
Yep.
So how would you handle a delete in an idempotent way?
So either the simplest option is to ignore delete failure. Like if you try to run it a few times, then database should typically handle that idempotency. So it will throw exception, but maybe that's fine. The other way is to check if the record exists, but then it's like it's not, you don't have any guarantee that between reads and delete there won't change something, especially if those are subscriptions that are running constantly. The other thing is that you could set up some cache or durable cache like in database and store event IDs and set unique ID, or some lightweight in memory or Redis. And then if there is already such event process, then just skip the handling part.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of overhead around it, but this is just one of the things you have to consider, is that, you know, the event might arrive, and this isn't just something specific to EventStore, but the event might arrive multiple times whenever you're doing any form of EDA. So
yeah, I think that even if you set resolve link-tos to false, then in edge case you might get event more than once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yep. So the last part that I would recommend before starting the real migration is to have some regression tests. At least that's how we do it, because those test projects, test consoles are useful. You can manually test it, but I think that you will have a lot of round trips, and you would like to continuously be able to say that whether your change is working fine or if it's not working. So I would add simple integration test. If you don't have such integration tests, then before doing migration, I would really recommend you to do it. But do you typically start with? I have some old tests. Let's delete it. Do you prefer to have more unit tests or integration tests? Which team are? Yeah, same.
Yeah, this is one of my things. Is that like I kind of get the idea behind TDD, and I do like it, but and unit tests. But the problem is that so often those unit tests are become incredibly brittle, and you get into a situation where every time you change a piece of code, you have to change your test as well, and then that kind of removes some of the use of a test in the first place. Integration tests that sit a little bit more on the outside, generally they don't have to change as much, and I'm very because of that.
Yeah, I think that especially tests that are touching database are really important, especially read model side, because some may say that, for example, for appends, it's quite easy to provide some in-memory mock because there is nothing fancy there. But still, I think nowadays some of the assumptions that integration tests are slow are not so applicable anymore, because for sure they are slower than unit tests, but spinning up Docker container is really really easy.
Yeah, it's made the situation a whole lot nicer.
Yeah,
and for destroying it as well.
Yeah.
So you've written some tests here.
Yeah. See how fast I type in?
Yeah. So are these read model tests or write model tests?
Could you maybe
I said these for the read model, yeah?
Yeah, for both.
Yeah.
Let's go through them. So we will be, I mean, mostly for the read models, because we want to make sure that it's working end to end. So what I did is I mostly copy and pasted what's in test console and projection manager, just wrapped it with the retry policy, because with the subscription by default we are getting eventual consistency. So if we immediately asked about the read model here after running command, then there is a high risk that there won't be there. I mean, the subscriptions are pretty fast, but it's inevitable that even network latency you need to consider. So there is always small delay. Like eventual consistency doesn't mean that it's run slowly, but what it means is just you are unsure how soon it will be processed. So yeah, mostly it's the same code as we've seen. So I'm dispatching command, then I'm running an assert on RavenDB that there is expected state for each of those four comments that we already saw. And yeah, this is I'm setting up the connection, and that's all. The only thing that we need to add, and I think that it seems it's really visible that you like TDD, because everything by default is internal.
Yeah.
So I had to add internal visible too. I think that some may say that this is blasphemy, that we should not test internal code. But yeah, I think that I copy and pasted to the wrong one. That should work, I hope. No. Let's try to check. Okay, so that one. Yeah. Yes. So it's clearly visible on this webinar that I'm a cheater.
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. So
show me the tests again.
Yeah.
So you just got one test there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Those are not the production grade end-to-end tests. There is a lot of space for improvement, but as you can see, that gives us enough certainty that when we will be doing this migration, then we can run the test and make sure that we didn't break anything. And now, finally, as we have this test green, let's run it again. So if someone missed that part. So yeah, it's green. Great. And we are ready for the final migration. And let's try to add the gRPC client to all of our projects. So this is a new one. This is kind of tricky because the gRPC client is our internal one. We had that idea once that we will have the separate clients for different needs. And it's kind of like that. Persistent subscriptions have separate client also. If you would like to create or do some management stuff, then you need to use different NuGet, but that's just...
And projections and user admin separate as well?
There might be I'm not sure to be true. I never remember which is where, but for sure all of those methods that we need are here.
Yeah.
We won't be creating projections. But I think that, yeah, it's also wrapped in this minute, the other one. There is see, there are persistent subscription, projection management, operations. It's not the same for other clients. Some have only single package like Node.js, but yeah, for .NET, and we are interested today in .NET, it's like that. So as you see, I didn't remove the TCP client because that's also something that I would suggest to do. So do a gradual step-by-step migration, because both if you append even from the TCP client, and if you, for example, subscribe from the gRPC client, then if you are using the same serialization way, then they are compatible. So it's totally safe to just use TCP at first, migrate, for example, appends and reads, because they are simpler, at least I think, like that, to gRPC, and leave subscriptions to TCP client. And then when you make sure, like for example, running this test, that it's working fine, then you can do another step. So introduce subscriptions changes, because they are a bit more trickier, especially on the operation side.
Yeah.
So Matt, you like repository pattern?
I like it in this case.
Why?
Offer me an alternative.
Some say that you could use some extension methods, or just use raw, or you can use raw API of the database that you are using, or ORM.
Oh, I mean, in some cases, then yeah, I think it does make sense to use a raw API, but because of a little bit of helping, extra work we have to do to rehydrate the objects around here, then yeah, I probably would pan. But yeah, extension methods would also work for me.
Yeah, but to be true, in my opinion, if someone's using extension methods, then what's the difference? It's also, you can call them repository pattern, right? In a way.
Yeah, syntactically different, but not much.
Yeah, but in this case, I fully agree. So, I mean, if someone is not a huge fan of repository for various reasons, then I would still suggest to consider that using it during migration. So either repository, extension method, or whatever wrapper that you have, because then if we are using this abstraction on top of our client, then we can at least try to just migrate the internals. And if we are using some subset of API, then it would be, in my opinion, much easier to perform migration. Afterwards, you may decide to drop it, but I think that having such a wrapper code, if someone is afraid of repository, you can name it aggregate store, as Alexei laughs. But yeah, that's also my recommendation. So yeah, let's start with.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the first thing you would change when it comes to moving to the gRPC client?
I would probably start with appends.
Okay.
Or I would just toss a coin and decide whether to do it with appends or reads. I would probably do it in parallel almost. I mean, as a single change. So here I will start with the appends. So I replaced the old code. And if we compare it to the old one, it's also append to stream async, which is not the biggest change. But what we did, and it's a bit different, is that that we updated and make typing more explicit. So the first change is that we are not using long values anymore. Hi, Steph. And we are using unsigned long. So because there is no point of sending negative value, because positions are always 0 or greater. And we also introduced some classes to be more explicit about what you are passing. So in general, we have stream revision, and stream revision is responsible if you are using optimistic concurrency. And if you don't, then I encourage you to do that, because in my opinion, that's a basis for the proper handling in the idempotent world.
So what you're talking about here is that basically you're as well as passing the events to the database, you're also saying what version you're expecting the database to currently be at before you say.
Yes, exactly.
So if there is another client that's interacting with the same aggregate, you can be sure that they both haven't tried to update at the same time, right?
Yes, that's correct. So TLDR, it's you are making sure that you are making decision on the latest state. So, and database guarantee us that. And what's important, and some people are missing, is that EventStoreDB guarantees strong consistency on appends. So all of appends are atomic, and you can use optimistic concurrency. So on appends, you have exactly the same strong guarantees, for example, for relational database. Yeah. In fact, the appends are comparable to serializable transaction level in relational database, so the highest transaction level.
So there's that check that takes place, but there's also another check as well, isn't there, where if you attempt to append the same event twice with the same ID, then we'll stop that happening as well. So should be.
Yep.
So you don't actually get the same event twice.
Yes, that's correct. So the other change that I did in the meantime, we also introduced the unique identifier class. That's one of the changes that we did because gRPC client introducing gRPC allowed us to easier provide clients in a different environments. I know that probably majority of our viewers don't care about other environments because they are .NET developers. At least that's my assumption. But for us, that's a big deal, because right now we have a Go client, Rust, Java, Node.js, so both JavaScript and TypeScript, and I think that Haskell. No, Haskell doesn't have gRPC, but yeah, it's much easier to iterate if you have set standard like gRPC and built-in stuff like back pressure, etc., instead of doing a homebrew protocol. And yeah, so for that, other environments doesn't have that notion of GUIDs, so we just use the RFC, etc., but that's not much different. The other thing that's a bit different is that from now you don't provide isJSON property, but you are able to provide content type. By default is JSON, but if you are using some other content type, then you can set it. And I think that it enables some easier infrastructure for non-JSON types, like the binary protocols like Protobuf or Avro are getting much more popular. So I think that it's fine to be explicit on the type that you have, or even if you have different types of events in the event store, then being able to know what's the exact type here.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing to mention about that, though, obviously, is that at the moment, internally, our projections will only work if it's the data is JSON, right? Sorry.
Yes.
Projections, yeah.
Yep. And maybe I will do one more change, because here we are saving. So we are saying that we expect that version, but to be really precise on what we are doing, we could introduce following methods. Maybe let's keep it for now, cancellation tokens. So we could say, besides what you already saw, the stream revision, then if we have stream revision, then that means that we already got the current version somehow from the read model usually, or the last append, and we know which version we expect. But if we are starting new stream, then we don't have that version. So in gRPC client, you can use stream state class and say that we expect that no stream exists. And then EventStoreDB will make sure that if you are appending this event and there is the stream already started, then it will throw exception and not allow you to start it again. So it's just another level of certainty. So let's try. We have save method here. So we expect that admit patient will be creation. I'm not sure if Ruben will be watching that, but I know that he will criticize me for making that split, because he said that we shouldn't be expecting what's the set order of events, but that's another story. I think that it's a pragmatic choice that we could make.
Yeah, I think I'm coming around to the explicit nature of it, to be honest.
Yeah. So it seems that our projects are succeeding. The only parts that are not working is that we need to inject right now the EventStoreDB client. So we already have that class added. So again, we will tell database that, yeah, we are professionals and we are not running that in a secure mode. As you see, unfortunately, the connection strings are not compatible. So you will need to do some kind of migration, but we have configuration tool that will generate the connections, gRPC connection string for you. So that's something that I think is much easier. For TCP, we don't have such. Okay, get event store. So here again. Okay, one left. So let's do it here. Also, call it here. Okay, so right now we have situation that we only migrated appends. So let's make sure that it's working fine. So we will benefit from having this integration tests. And if I didn't break anything, then that should be fine. Cool.
So to summarize that, the only main difference between the TCP appends and the gRPC appends is got a slightly different method signature. We've replaced GUIDs with a unique identifier, our own unique identifier. The JSON, you can specify an explicit type rather than it just being JSON. And what else was there?
That's all. Unique identifier.
Yeah, I mentioned unique identifier.
Yeah.
So there's not actually that much different in the way that they behave.
Yeah, as long as you are using the same type of serialization and the serialization, then it's fine. So, so let's go to get events. So this code will change a bit. So as I mentioned, we have here this pagination that you had to do if you wanted to get all events, and typically you would like to. So it's simplified because you, as I mentioned, you are getting async enumerable here, so you can benefit from the toList async, which is I think really helpful, and it also like loads even one by one, so it's much more effective than if you just do toList typically and load all the events. Unfortunately, not in all cases, all of our users, or we can have short streams. So having async enumerable is, I think, really cool. But besides that, not much change. Besides, we need to also change the type, because the new type is also named resolved event. So not much change here, but the namespace has changed. And we are also getting a span, which is also performance improvement instead of byte array. So if there are some performance freaks here, then I hope that you appreciate that. But besides that, not much there. I'm just using the Newtonsoft as I was using. We could consider using system.text.json, but that's not what we are focused here today. So yeah, it seems that it's compiling. Let's try to run it again. And see if reads are working. Yep. Cool. So right now we can get rid of the injecting of the connection because we don't need it anymore. So see what we did. We migrated appends, we migrated reads. We make sure after each of that step that it's working as it was. And we see that even subscriptions are working, which are still on the TCP client. And after that, after we are sure that that's working fine, then we can just drop that support, and we can just kill it here. And yep, that's not needed anymore. I think that's also not needed. And that also. Or maybe. We don't have. See, that's also one thing that I love about gRPC. There are not so many stuff that I said that I love, but there's a lot that I like. But I really love that we got rid of this connect async method, because to me, when I started to work with the TCP client, that was so weird, because you had to call it at precisely one, because if you call it twice, then it would fail. What's more, if you called this connect async method, then it might be that connection is down because database cannot be accessible, but you don't have this information. You will get on the first call, first operation, like append, read, or whatever. So from the usability perspective, I think that not having this method is really nice. It simplifies the connection management, especially that it was async. And if you'd like to inject event store client, so gRPC client as a singleton, then again, it's much easier if you don't have this initialization. And in general, connection management didn't change much in a way that you still should inject it in. You should still inject it as singleton. gRPC client will handle for you the reconnection, or in fact, those are not precisely reconnection, because contrary to TCP client, it does not keep the connection open. So that's another benefit. The downside is that you won't see subscriptions on currently running persistent subscription on the UI. But besides that, it's also more effective if you just, even if the connect operation failed because database was not accessible for some reason, or you have some random network issue, then I think that it's really cool that database will still handle that for you. But besides that, it's much simpler because all of that is built in right now in gRPC client. So anything more, Matt, to add about that part?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's possibly around the cancellation tokens, but are you going to look at that later? Or?
Yeah, I can do it now. Let's just check if we don't have some failures. Yeah, because another thing that that wasn't great about TCP client is it was built when there was no cancellation tokens. So it was really wild times. And unfortunately, it stayed in a bit in those wild times. So there is no cancellation tokens. So if you are using if you'd like to have the proper cancellation handling, then TCP client does not allow you to do that. I mean, it's still thread safe besides the connection part, but it's much better if you can, and much more safe if you can use cancellation tokens. So maybe we can show it a bit. So command handler, it just has a wrapper for all of the command handlers that we have. So we can register specific method, and then it will be run in the dispatcher. And it currently assumes that it has the command, which is object. So we will add here the cancellation token as a second parameter. And if we run it, then the compilation should fail. Yeah, it does. Because right now our handler, so our lambdas, assumes that there is only a single parameter. So I will update that to include also. And it seems that what we have to do is to get the cancellation tokens directly into our methods. So we'll need to add cancellation token here. So if you remember what I pasted, then and I even had that initially. So yeah, we can pass it right now. And same for update, and same for reads. So let's pass cancellation token. And here.
Refactoring.
Sorry?
I didn't realize Rider could do that. That's nice.
Yeah, that's a cool feature. I'm not sure from which version is it, but I also quite recently found about that. I think that method needs to follow some naming convention, because for read stream async it didn't suggest that. But yeah, as you see, nothing fancy. We are just passing the cancellation tokens. And we need to make sure that I can write the proper code. Okay. Let's see. Get events. Again, we need to pass the cancellation token here. Let's build it again. And yeah, the command handler map, which is what I mentioned, the mapping that will be used. So we are also saying that our handler requires command object and cancellation token. And what we need to change is also dispatcher. So unfortunately, changing cancellation token is a bit tedious work. It's not like it's hard, but it requires some patience. And we need to get that into our test code. So maybe let's start with programs. So let's pass cancellation token here. We don't need it here. Sorry. We need it here. So let's create some cancellation token. If you are typically, you probably, at least I hope, you are not using it in a console application, but probably some web API, then you can get it from the HTTP request and properly handle that. And yeah, let's pass the cancellation token here. And over here.
No places to pass on a realize. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I think that I'm at almost the end of that. Let's see how many codes have you written. That's kind of cool. Sometimes it's nice to realize that what you did is much more extensive than you supposed. Yeah, and the final one, grand finale. I'm not sure if XUnit can pass cancellation token. I think that it's not so smart as such. Yep. We could probably pass it even further on, but let's leave it like that. Yep. And just to make sure that I didn't break anything, let's run the test. Seems that something is wrong. What's that? Let me just double check with the. Okay. Okay, I think that, yeah, let me just start it again. Yeah. Run. Yep. So it seems that I had some leftovers. Yeah. By the way, I think that in US they love leftovers, but maybe not that one. Okay. And speaking about leftovers, what we have left is the projection part. So we will update the subscription logic, and in subscription, so we will again inject our event store client. this time we will just replace the event store connection, because there is only a single call for the event store projection, so there is no point in keeping the event store connection from the TCP. And what we're gonna do is that we will update the start. And right now, there is not huge difference if you were using like in a classical way, because what is quite unusual for me is that in TCP client you had plenty of different overloads, like filtered, subscription, subscribe to all. There is like, I think that for subscribe to all there are at least 4 or 5 overloads with totally different naming. So in my opinion, the gRPC right now is much more explicit, because you have only either subscribe to stream or subscribe to all, together with the additional overloads depending on what features you would like to provide. So if you would like to also use filtered subscription, so for example, filter out or filter only events of the certain stream name prefix, or event type prefix, then you can just pass a parameter here and use the same method. So I don't know, Matt, did you like the previous naming?
No, it was something that's grown over time, and I think it lost a little bit of its consistency. So yeah, much appreciate the gRPC changes.
Yeah, what's maybe not great for someone is that because we introduced the explicit typing and explicit params, then if you want to subscribe from the beginning of so get all the events, then you need to call overload without the position. If you provide, as in the previous version, like if you try to pass it like 0 or start, then it won't work. If you use start, then it will just skip the first event, because subscription means that you are subscribing from the event after a certain checkpoint. So the next event after the position, after the last one. So if you think on that, then it kind of makes sense, because you are saying that that's the last position that you processed, and you expect to handle next event, but that might be confusing for some people. And I already saw that for some it was. So yeah, next thing that we need to do is update the event appeared logic a bit, because there is different signature. Yeah, let me find it. Yeah, that one. Because there is different signature, it doesn't change much. You still need to do deserialize, handle, store the new position somewhere in your cache. That's not much change besides the signature. And we also, what wasn't there in the initial code is that I recommend to always subscribe to connection dropped, because the connection dropped is triggered when there is a connection lost by the event store, and or there was a bug in processing. So in this case, event store won't start subscription for you. It will just fail the subscription, and if you don't handle resubscription, then it will automatically fail. So at least please just provide some console log that, or logging that will tell you that something has failed. And we are still using the commit and prepare position. In the future, we might change that a bit, but hard to say when. Okay. So I'm changing to ulong and signed long, as I mentioned. let me just clean it up, the old client API names, and we will use, so right now I updated event appeared, I added some logging when connection was dropped, and unfortunately what's missing in gRPC is that you don't get more any more notification about when the live processing started. I mean, it's not like extreme. In all cases, you will need that, because you shouldn't expect that your read model is up to date to all of the changes, but to some optimization, it might be useful to have such event from the event store. We are considering bringing that back into gRPC client, but at this stage, at this moment, there is none. Maybe Matt, would you like to expand on where that could be useful?
Yeah, well, I would like it as well. But essentially, this comes down to the fact that depending on whether your projection is in live mode or if it's in catch-up mode, you might want to treat the way you handle the events differently. For example, in catch-up, you don't care as much about the latency between an event being written and it being output to the read model. So you might be able to wait for 10, 100, 1,000 events to come in before you process them, which will ultimately make the catch up quicker. But when you are processing events live, you do care about that. So you probably want to handle each event individually. Having a live processing there would allow you to kind of flip from one mode into the other, depending upon whether it was catching up or whether it was processing live.
Yeah, or you could use it to some upscaling or downscaling. That can also be some potential trigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we hope that we will get that soon, but unfortunately it's not there at that moment. So I just have to delete, so sorry for that. And the last part that I would like to show about this synchronization, the subscription, is the reconnection. So instead of having just naive console logging, we could add resubscribe logic. And let's just, this red one, I will explain it a bit later on. So that's the most basic example of the how to do resubscription. Typically, we would like to have only single resubscribe happening at the time, because we wouldn't want to have multiple instances of the same subscription, because that may lead to some issues like idempotency or etc. So I'm using wrapping the resubscribing in a lock. So that's just simple .NET stuff. And I'm just calling again start projection async, or start, I could call it start projection async to restart this projection. And unfortunately, this method is not awaitable. So I need to use, again, cheat a bit and use wait, which is not great because that may cause some deadlocks. And we would like to avoid that. So to have that, what you may consider is some simple class, which is like no synchronization context. And what it does, it just tells that .NET that you don't need to have synchronization between different contexts. And as subscription is run on the backend, it's not touching code like WinForms or WPF application. When that matters, then that's kind of safe. Kinda. So this is all of those wrapping code is just to make sure that we don't have deadlocks and we don't have more than one resubscription. And what's also important is to add some delay between trying to subscribe again, because if we don't add that delay, best if it has some also random factor, because then again we won't be banging database continuously trying to reconnect to it. So that's something that we should consider. I think that I broken the copy and pasted too much. So let me generate it, and I can just call resubscribe. And we also use cancellation token here. So Matt, do you want to add something around that, or?
Not really. That's pretty much. I can't think of anything else to say about it.
Yeah. Let's see what it doesn't like much. Seems that I think that yeah, maybe. Let's see. I either copy and paste it too much or I do something wrong. So maybe let's just get back to the previous state with the connection drop. Just doing the basic stuff. Yep. We can delete that. So if you are running the production code, then I really encourage you to not use to do resubscription and to make sure that you're safe here. So again, let's just remove the event store connection. I think that's the last program CS that I didn't update with the get event store. So using gRPC client, let's replace it. Let's have it like that. And let's do it here. Let's do start async and pass some cancellation token. I can do just a shortcut here. As you can see in the .NET code, there is no yeah. So that's one. Let's use get event store. Yep. And what is different is that starting projection is also async method. So yeah, so it seems that we migrated all the things. Let's run the end-to-end test. Yep, so we made it.
So it's not actually for the basic usage of a subscription of a append, read, and subscribe. It is very similar to the original TCP client, just with some small improvements here and there.
Yep.
Bring it into one world. There was one other thing I was going to bring up as well, actually, about the subscriptions, which is something that I would have liked to have changed, which is in the handling of basically big checkpoints, appending the checkpoints. If you go to the code, yeah. So this is a mistake that I see people do a lot, and I've done it here because, again, it was the simplest thing to do. But when you update the checkpoint in a separate transaction to actually updating your read model, there's obviously the possibility that read model will get updated and a checkpoint won't, and then you might end up updating it twice. Call this out because it's a mistake I've seen happen a lot recently. So it's ideally, if you can update the read model and the checkpoint in the same transaction, it does make the whole thing a lot safer. Sorry, I know it's a bye, but like I say, it's a common mistake that I see a lot.
Yeah,
and I've done it here. So,
of course, if your read model allows you to have transaction,
yeah,
not always the case. Yeah. So in general, that's all. So to sum up, what we recommend: at first, make sure that you prepared for the migration. So in this case, it might mean that maybe it's worth updating .NET. gRPC client doesn't support all .NET framework. So if you are doing that, then unfortunately you would need to also do the migration. I also recommend to follow that approach that at first make the change easy, then make the easy change. So for example, wrap your code to make stuff easier, because as you see, if we didn't do these cancellation tokens or other Scout updates, Boy Scout updates, then it would be just more or less seamless if we just make the behavior the same. And besides retries and missing transactions, for appends there is no difference, and for reads from the TCP connection. For subscription, there is a bit, but also nothing substantial here, as long as you remember to check the default settings if they are not changed, for example, res of link tos. So I would also recommend to start with prepare and have some good tests on your application, at least basic integration that would go through your critical path in application and make sure that it's working fine. Start with the appends and reads because they are easier. Even deploy that, wait a bit, wait until it's settled. If there are no bugs, then consider migrating subscriptions. And yeah, after that, you could safely just remove EventStore client. Of course, as long as you don't have V5 nodes, which we also recommend to update because they are getting also soon out of support. And gRPC clients only support databases from 20.6. And even if you don't or you can't migrate to gRPC, then I think that you should consider migrating to the latest TCP client and making sure that you have all of the retries, default settings handled properly. But yeah, I think that in general, I like the gRPC API more, and that's also the way how we will go. Like the TCP client will only get the necessary bug fixes, and all of the new features like persistent subscription to all will be only added to gRPC client. And yeah, there is a question from Yordis. I think that I already answered, but before Yordis joined. So yeah, one of the steps, and I think that this is also a go-to. So also for TCP client, try to use connection string. It will also make the migration easier. So yep, we recommend to use the connection string. And Matt, anything more to add from your side?
No, just to reiterate what you said is that because the gRPC and the TCP client can work alongside each other, then there is no reason to kind of do this as a single big bang migration. You can migrate it, part by part, and it'll make it a lot safer should anything go wrong, which hopefully it won't.
I think that it will at some point, because migration is never easy. But yeah, I hope that it will help you. What we showed today on your migration path. If not, then feel free to reach me. I will also soon publish the migration guideline on our documentation. So more stuff coming around that. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask now or reach me through other ways. Like, I'm quite loud in internet, so it should be easy to find me. Are there any more questions on the chat or from you, Matt?
Not at the moment, no.
Cool. Then I think that we can call it a day.
Sounds good. Sounds good. It's interesting to watch. You code a lot quicker than I do.
Yeah, I copy and pasting.
I know, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm a cheater. So, yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you also enjoyed and that this material will help you. And have a great evening, or if you are watching it from the re-recording, then maybe have a good morning. Bye.